Hi, I'm Sherry from Whole Circle Studio, and welcome to the Greenhouse Garden Block of the Month and Sew Along. I'm so happy that you're joining us. Today, I'm going to give you some tips as you begin to make your 7th greenhouse garden block. In addition to this video, be sure to refer to the tips included in the pattern, as well as the links below to additional video tutorials. This month, I want to give you some tips for how I achieve really flat seams, making my blocks look much nicer and easier to sew together. Let's get started. For most of my foundation paper pieced blocks, I use a seam roller to press along the way before joining on the next section. Occasionally, I'll get some fabric that doesn't want to lay flat, and that's when I pull out my bigger tool, my iron that gets really hot. I'll include a link below to my favorite iron. I really love this mini iron for foundation paper piecing. I find it's easier to have control over it, and it heats up really fast. I also like using a wool pressing mat. One of the ways to achieve flatter seams is to press from both sides of your fabric, but that's impossible to do in foundation paper piecing when the paper is still attached to your fabric. Never ever press the paper side of your block. Spoiler alert, the ink on your paper will transfer to your iron, making a huge mess. When you press your fabric on a wool pressing mat, the heat is absorbed into the wool, so it's essentially like pressing from both sides of the fabric. I find that my seams are flatter for all types of piecing when I use my wool mat. I'll include links below to my favorite wool pressing mat, as well as a blog post I did all about wool pressing mats. Another way to get really flat seams is to use a wooden tailor's clapper with your iron and your pressing mat. Sometimes it takes a little bit of extra muscle to get these seams to lay flat. Much like the wool pressing mat, the heat from your iron is absorbed into the wood, trapping the heat and then transferring it back into the fabric. When using a clapper, I first give the block a good press with my hot iron. I then place my clapper on top, and since it's a pretty hefty piece of wood, I don't have to put a lot of pressure on it. I could just leave the wood there for a minute or so, and voila, a much flatter seam. I have this basic tailor's clapper made from a piece of red oak that's sanded down. I have one here that measures approximately 11 inches by 3 inches by 2 inches for longer seams. And I have a smaller one that measures 4 by 2 by 2 for shorter seams. The edges are eased and the wood is left natural, with the idea being that you don't want anything like a sealer or stain transferring to your fabric or interfering with the heat transfer process. If you want to give it a try, but don't want to make your own clapper, I'll include some links to clappers below. It's really important to press along the way while foundation paper piecing, but keep in mind that these pieces won't lay perfectly flat since you still have paper in the block taking up space. Once you remove the paper, you'll have an opportunity to go ahead and give the block another good press with all of these tools and techniques. I can't wait to see your blocks come together. Thanks again for being here and for sewing along with us. I'll be back next month with even more tips. In the meantime, be sure to share your progress on Instagram using the Greenhouse Garden hashtags found on the pattern, and tag me so I'm sure to see what you're working on. Or I'd love for you to email me photos of your block. My email address can be found in the pattern. See you next month, and happy sewing.